Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Online Church. We've got an exciting program for you today, and I'm so glad that you can join us. We're going to be talking about alcohol and what alcohol actually does to your body. I'm so glad that you can join us today, and we're going to launch straight into our discussion. And we're also going to have a live question and answer session with myself and also Pastor Chris Guo as he explores how alcohol also relates to the Bible. So we're going to start off with the health talk on alcohol. Then we're going to have a Bible segment after the health talk. And then the last 15 minutes, we're going to have our live question and answer session. They'll start at about 10:45. So make sure that you bring all your questions and we'll do our best to answer it. So let's jump right into our program. Alcohol does that. Let me pull up my slides. Okay. Now, the Bible actually does talk quite a little bit about alcohol as well. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18, it says, "Do not get drunk on wine." So why does the Bible have to talk about alcohol? What does alcohol do to our body? I want to introduce you to a person that I'm sure that you know quite well. Have a look at this person on the screen. All of you recognize him? That's right. That's Robin Williams. Unfortunately, he sadly passed away in 2014. And Robin Williams was regarded as a funny man, someone who made many people laugh, one regarded by many as successful in pretty much every aspect of life that you can think of. He had it all. He had a loving family, he had a successful career, he had fame, he had fortune. But, there is one thing that Robin Williams struggled with, and that thing actually plagues our society today. What is that thing? Unfortunately, it is alcohol. In an interview with ABC News, Robin Williams described his addiction as one that is of the most widely used legal drugs in society. It's something that lays latent, he describes it as, lying in wait for the time when you take that drink. Alcohol is certainly a terrible drug and a terrible addiction. He made a very interesting statement in that interview with ABC News. When asked about when he knew that he needed help, he said he knew he needed help when he was violating his standards quicker than he could lower them. At that time, when he had this epiphany, this realization, he checked himself into alcohol rehab, and after 2 months of medications, was finally able to come out clean. When we drink, alcohol activates what we call the mesolimbic pathway. If you were here a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about sugar. You might recognize this picture. Well, it's the same pathway that sugar activates when we have it. Is the same pathway that alcohol activates as well. Alcohol, nicotine, recreational drugs such as heroin, ecstasy, all causes big surges of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Now, when we have dopamine released, it triggers this reward system and it tells us to do it again. And with repeated activations of this dopamine reward system, it causes a mesh-like glue to form, and it makes it very, very difficult for us to break those habits. And this is why it's so difficult to overcome alcohol addiction. It is a pattern that is literally ingrained and held together by the brain, by this mesh-like glue. Interestingly, alcohol stops us from stopping ourselves. It lowers our inhibitory response, in addition to some of the other things that are listed here on the slide that you can see. It helps us to, sadly, make bad decisions because it can affect and even permanently damage our frontal lobes. And it makes people also more prone to depression as well. The frontal lobe is responsible for controlling our emotions and impulses and are responsible for the planning processes, forming ideas and making of decisions. Alcohol can also permanently damage and affect our learning and memory by affecting a part of our brain called the hippocampus. which is the key for learning and remembering. Of all the damage that alcohol can do to a developing brain, it harms the hippocampus, which is the learning aspect, the most. It also slows down our reflexes as well by affecting the cerebellum. That's why we are told not to drink and drive. When you drink alcohol and you drive, you're going to react slower to situations on the road, which can lead to accidents. And it also impairs other basic functions too, like the hypothalamus, which is responsible for helping control things like our bodily functions, like temperature and blood pressure and our heart rate. So really, alcohol can impact a lot of places in our brain. I want to show you here a picture of a healthy brain, a healthy 43-year-old brain, which you'll see here on the left, and also the brain of an alcoholic 43-year-old here on the right. You can see here that when you look up onto the screen, the normal brain is filled up right up to the edges of the skull. Whereas when you look at on the right side, the alcoholic 43-year-old brain, the brain has literally shrunk. And unfortunately, this is perhaps the saddest picture in this whole slide deck, is this one here. On the left, you can see here the picture of a 6-week-old baby. This is a normal brain of a 6-week-old baby, full in size. On the right side, we have a picture of another 6-week-old baby, but this baby has what we call fetal alcohol syndrome, meaning that the mother drank alcohol throughout the whole pregnancy. Notice the stark difference between a healthy baby brain and a alcoholic mother who drank throughout the pregnancy. You see here, this is how alcohol really affects the brain. And sadly, this baby didn't even have a choice, and yet it will likely have lifelong permanent brain issues because of fetal alcohol syndrome. You know, alcohol affects nearly every system in your body. It affects the heart, the lungs, the liver, blood, skin, fat, the gut. The list just goes on and on. It can make diseases like diabetes and mental health problems worse. In the liver, it can lead to cirrhosis, which is the scarring of the liver. It can lead to anemia, which is a low blood count. It can also lead to blood pressure issues in the heart. And also in the lungs, it can lead to inflammation in there as well. And it can also affect our immune system, which is why we're telling our patients to lower your alcohol consumption, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic as well. So, why do we think that alcohol is good for us? You see, the problem really lies a lot in the fact that the alcohol industry funds a lot of the studies that promote the beneficial effects of alcohol. In 2017, the National Institute of Health started a $100 million clinical trial to test whether a drink a day really does help to prevent heart attacks. Guess who picked up most of the bill? 5 companies, which are amongst the world's largest alcoholic beverage manufacturers. InBev, some of you will recognize Heineken, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, and Carlsberg. They pledged $67.7 million to this study. So that means that a little bit more than 2/3 of this study was actually funded by alcoholic beverage manufacturers. And so that's why the New York Times published this news article saying, "Is alcohol good for you?" An industry-backed study seeks answers. So you have to really wonder how what's the word? How reliable is this study going to be? When you think about it, it's backed by an industry that has mutual beneficial outcomes if this study is shown to be positive. So that's why we just have to be a little bit careful in that regard. So is alcohol actually good for you? The short answer is no. You see, in 2016, the UK government issued new guidelines on alcohol stating that any amount will increase your risk of cancer. And so they issued a statement saying that there is no safe limits for alcohol. And the reality is that 3.5% of all cancer deaths worldwide are attributable to the consumption of alcohol. You see, the World Health Organization has classified alcohol as a class 1 carcinogen. What does that mean? It means that we know that this substance is directly linked to cancer. You might be thinking, what kinds of cancers are those? Well, our next slide is going to tell you exactly what those cancers are. You see here, alcohol can cause at least 7 different types of cancer, 7 that we know of anyway. So, mouth and upper throat, this is the first one that we know. Why? Because alcohol obviously is going to enter through our mouth first. It can cause cancers of the larynx, that's a little bit lower down. Cancers of the esophagus, that's your food pipe. Breast cancer in women is another really big one. Liver cancer and bowel cancer as well. We know that alcohol can cause cancer in at least four different ways that we know of. First way is that it damages cells. So alcohol is actually something that will damage our cells. And so our body will need to repair the damage that is done. That's why it can cause virtually all cancers related to the gastrointestinal system. Mouth, upper throat, esophagus, liver, bowel, all of these areas. These are gastrointestinal parts of our body. And so alcohol will increase the risk of all of them because it comes into contact, or the liver in this particular case helps to break down alcohol, which is why it can lead to liver issues as well. It also, interestingly, if you smoke, it worsens the damage from tobacco. So alcohol and smoking are a horrible combination because it worsens the damage caused by tobacco. It also affects hormones linked to breast cancer as well. And so that's why if you're a woman and you drink alcohol, you're going to increase your likelihood of potentially getting breast cancer. And also, alcohol breaks down into cancer-causing chemicals. So these are the 4 ways that we know of in which alcohol potentiates your risk of getting cancer. Interestingly, when we're speaking about breast cancer in particular, we know that, say for example, breast cancer, 10 out of 1,000 women would get breast cancer. If you drink alcohol to the legal, I shouldn't say legal, to what the doctors call a healthy limit, so 1 standard drink in women and 2 standard drinks in men per day, it doubles your risk. So 20 out of 1,000 women will get breast cancer if you drink to the recommended limit. And if you drink above that limit, so again, 1 standard drink for a woman and 2 standard drinks for a man daily, it increases to 50 out of 1,000 women would get breast cancer that way. So it doesn't take really a lot to increase your risk of cancer. And so you might be thinking, why then are people saying that red wine is in fact good for you? Well, the answer lies in a compound called polyphenols. It is actually a nutrient that is found in grapes. So you might be thinking, okay, so what should we eat and drink instead of wine or alcohol to get these benefits of these polyphenols? Well, I'm going to show you what polyphenols do first, and then I'm going to show you what foods that you can have in order to get the benefits of polyphenols. So, benefits of polyphenols. Well, there are many actually. Polyphenols help to fight cancer cells, which is ironic that red wine contains them. And unfortunately, there's not enough polyphenols to overcome the cancer-causing effects of alcohol. But polyphenols in a situation where there is no alcohol actually helps you to fight cancer cells. Polyphenols actually also help to reduce inflammation as well, and they are protective of your heart. Most likely these two are linked because if you remember from our previous talks about inflammation is really one of these new silent killers that everyone's been talking about. Inflammation leads to heart problems, strokes, and dementia. And so polyphenols actually help you to reduce inflammation, which is fantastic. It also promotes brain health as well. So heart health, brain health, polyphenols are fantastic for that. If you are diabetic, polyphenols also help to support normal blood sugar levels, which is Again, an amazing thing. And it also helps to promote normal blood pressure. So this is why polyphenols have been, like red wine, that are in red wine, are linked to these things. But unfortunately, when you drink red wine, you also have the problems of alcohol as well. So if we can somehow get polyphenols without the negative effects of alcohol, that would be the best thing. So how do we do that? Next slide will tell us how. The polyphenols found in one glass of red wine can be found in these foods, so you don't have to have a single drop of alcohol. If you want the amount of polyphenols found in one glass of red wine, you only have to have 24 grams of walnuts. Walnuts are also another wonderful superfood, which you have plenty of other benefits as well, like healthy fats, being helpful for the brain function, and you also, in addition, get these polyphenols as well. So eating walnuts, fantastic thing to do. If you have 1.5 apples, same thing. Now remember, this is apples with the skin on, because the polyphenols are generally found in the skin of the grape, and that's why it's specifically red wine that is beneficial, not white wine, because it's the red part of the skin. And so 1.5 apples skin on is what you want to have to get these polyphenols. 158 grams of almonds. So almonds are a really great way. So you could have like an almond and walnut mix in like a container, and you can snack on those. That would be a great way of adding polyphenols into your diet every day. 85 grams of blueberries. Blueberries are fantastic way. A lot of us know that blueberries are a superfood. So not only do they contain polyphenols, they contain lots of antioxidants and lots of other beneficial vitamins. So we want to try and get some blueberries into our diet. Pomegranate juice is also fantastic. Most of you here would know that rich red color of pomegranates are a fantastic source of polyphenols. And also 270 grams of cranberries. So cranberries are also another fantastic way of getting polyphenols into your diet. And interestingly, if you're a lady and you want to help to prevent urinary tract infections, eating cranberries are a fantastic way of doing so as well. So all of these natural food products you can eat and consume and get those benefits of polyphenols without touching a single glass of alcohol at all. And so you can get all the wonderful benefits of these food groups without the negative effects of alcohol. What should you drink? Well, the short answer is really, you should be drinking water. Drinking water actually has amazing effects on your body. It can help you to actually lose weight by boosting your metabolic weight, and it also help you to feel fuller. It also helps you to flush out toxins through your sweat and through your urination, reducing your risk of kidney stones, urinary tract infections, and so on. And so drinking water is fantastic for that. And it helps you with digestion and also staying regular. If you don't have enough water, you're going to become dehydrated, and constipation is going to be a big issue, and nobody likes that. It also helps you to concentrate better and reduces headaches. And so if you're finding yourself getting a little bit sluggish at work or when you're studying, drink plenty of water. A lot of us are working from home at the moment, and it can be easy to just sit in front of your computer and work all day and not get up and drink water. And so during these times, it's especially important for us to remember to actually get up, drink that glass of water, and help you with your work function or your study, whatever it is that you're doing. And when you're exercising, it also helps improve your physical performance as well. So don't forget, before you exercise, after you exercise, have some water to drink. And so you might be wondering, how much should I be having? Look, there has been a lot of talk about this whole 2 liters a day. And truth be told, it is rough. It is just a rough guide. There are no actual really good studies to tell us how much we need to drink. But from the information that we can gather, around about 2.5 liters to 3 liters is where we should be at. And so that's why we get this 2 liter number, because we can usually get around half a liter to a liter from other sources like fruits and soups and food that we eat. So the other 2 liters comes from the water that we drink. If you are pregnant, we do recommend that you drink a little bit more. Top up around about 500 mils of water if you're pregnant, because when you're pregnant, you have more blood volume because you're supporting the baby, the fetus, and so you'll need a little bit more water intake a day. So add on about 500 ml on top of that. So if you're aiming for about 2 to 2.5 liters per day, that would be fantastic. But, some of you listening here today might struggle with an alcohol problem. And so this is where the Bible comes in. I want to give you a couple of reassuring memory verses that you can think about if you are struggling with alcohol addiction. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 13 has a wonderful promise. I'm going to read it out for you. It says here that no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. I think that's a wonderful promise. And the second one in Philippians chapter 4 verse 13 tells us this. If you are struggling with a problem of alcohol, God can give you the strength to get it through. Here's what it says in Philippians chapter 4 verse 13. It says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And, as we explore in our next segment with Pastor Chris Guo, he's going to talk to us a little bit about what does the Bible have to say about all of these things. So I'm going to pop Pastor Chris here on the line, and he'll be joining us very soon. Hello, Pastor Chris.
Hello. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. How are you today?
Not bad at all. How are you?
Very good, very good. So tell us, Pastor Chris, does the Bible talk a lot about alcohol as well?
Quite a bit, actually. I have some verses here. Just by listening to your talk, I was really inspired. Well, I used to be alcoholic, and by God's grace, and I stopped doing that.
Fantastic.
It's interesting because I want to lay this spiritual talk in a foundation that when you talk about alcohol from the physical perspective, from the medical perspective, it's actually the body cannot taking those things which is harm to the body. And it's actually, when we come to the spiritual side, the same thing. And God wants us to be holy, so he doesn't want us to mingle with those unclean, unholy things. And God in the business of separating his people. So today I want to share something with you guys about what the Bible says about this. And the goal of that is thinking about the creation. In Genesis 1, when God creates, he separates. When God separates, is life. And then when it comes to the flood, the whole flood, what it does is mixed everything together. It's a symbolic, it means a destruction. So when you mingle the unholy, unclean to the clean and holy, it doesn't result good. It actually result death and spiritual things as well. That's why I think in Bible is very clear on this topic. Let me just read some verse here with you. It's found in Isaiah chapter 5 verse 11. Bible says that woe to those who rise early in the morning, and that they might follow intoxicating drink, who continue until the night, till wine inflames them. So the Bible is pretty clear. Woe to them who rise up early in the morning and still follow the intoxicating drinks. And here you have another one, Proverbs 31:4. It is not for king, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes to intoxicating drinks, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. As you talking about, the brain is affecting the brain that will lose judgment. We'll lose the judgment. We'll lose the ability to discern what is bad, what is good. And we end up taking something that's not good for us.
Yes.
That's why the Bible is very clear on that.
It's actually quite interesting that the Bible actually talks about people drinking alcohol in the morning. Did you know, Pastor Chris, that one of the questions that we actually ask patients to try and figure out if they've got an alcohol drinking problem is actually, do you feel like a drink first thing when you get up in the morning? So it's interesting.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the what we call the cage questions. We ask these 4 questions about to try and trigger whether or not we think that that patient has an alcohol problem. And one of them is actually, do you feel like a drink when you wake up in the morning? So
maybe that applies to coffee when you get to talk about next time, huh?
Yeah, yes, that's right. So
right.
very interesting insights there, Pastor Chris.
And there are also some examples in the Bible and show us the consequence that people, when they're taking alcohol, especially intoxicating alcohol, and they have some bad results. Let me just bring it up a few of them so you can see that. The famous story started from the beginning, Noah, all right? It's found in Genesis chapter 9. It says that then he drank the wine and was drunk and become uncovered in his tent.
Mm.
Right? The say that the record is that Noah drink and stumble around naked and shamefully expose himself to his sons. And this
Mm.
is basically out of drinking alcohol. He get drunk, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Mm. Mm.
Right? That's one incident. The next one is a little bit also this next example is very interesting as well, is Lot.
Mm.
So Lot also drank. You remember the story
Mm.
after Lot coming out of Sodom and Gomorrah,
Mm.
and he wasn't destroyed by God's grace. And
Mm.
and then his daughter was like, "Hey, what we're gonna do? We're gonna have kids." So
Mm.
the verse, chapter 19, Genesis, verse 33 says this: So they, which is the daughter, made their father drink wine that night. And the
Mm.
firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he
Mm.
did not know when she laid down or when she arose.
Mm.
This
Mm.
this 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 whole um, incestuous act was done because
Mm.
alcohol, and their
Mm.
daughter knew the power and the effect of alcohol. They have to
Mm.
put a
Mm.
father drunk first, and they can go
Mm.
in to do the business.
Mm. Mm. So,
And we already know from the society, so many things has
mm,
done because they lost the control after drinking alcohol.
yes, yes, and
There's a
and
plenty of there's plenty example in the Bible. Like for
mm,
example, in the Exodus, people worshiping the idol, the worship the cow
mm,
because they were drinking, they were drunk.
mm,
Right? There's plenty
mm,
of examples. So Bible is pretty clear. Give us a very clear pattern.
mm,
Where does Bible stand on
mm.
alcohol?
So you're saying that even though these people were actually really godly and really holy people, people who others would have respected in God's church, actually made mistakes and some really big mistakes because of alcohol.
Yes,
Mm, mm.
absolutely.
Yeah, so we can see how powerful alcohol can be on the mind, and unfortunately, we see stories and news articles of this, quite frequently when someone who is drunk driving crashes and can sadly even kill someone.
Yeah, and
Unfortunately,
there's
still
actually a
happens
reason
today.
why the Australian law actually bans people under certain age to drink alcohol.
Mm,
If it's
mm,
good for our body, why would it ban the kids to drink alcohol?
mm, mm.
Right? This actually is just the common sense. Yes.
That's right. That's right. So, I guess the Bible is quite consistent in that alcohol is also not very good for you. Even though people, it seems that in Bible times also drank alcohol, generally didn't lead to good outcomes. Is that right, Pastor Chris?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm. Mm. What else does the Bible have to say about alcohol and the times that we live in today? Does it have anything to say about that?
Oh yes, actually, it's like I say, it's interesting. The word wine also is used in a prophecy.
Mm.
If you will, I'll take you to the verse in Revelation 14.
Mm.
And this is where we quote unquote is called the three angel messages. We understand that's the last gospel that God's giving to the people living right now.
Mm.
And in the second angel message, and the Bible says this, Revelation 14 verse 8, and there following another angel saying, Babylon is
Mm.
fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink the wine of the rest of her fornication.
Mm.
It's kind of interesting. Bible also put the word wine in there. It's because
Mm.
some of the people, the Babylon, the enemy of God, is using the wine, intoxicating the people. So they follow her. Some of them knowingly, some of them don't even know what's going on.
Mm.
And that's actually
Mm.
the wine is actually used in the prophecy. It also continue Revelation 17 verse 2, the
Mm.
whore, and says
Mm.
that with whom the kings of earth have committed fornication, and the
Mm.
inhabitants of earth has made drunk with the wine of fornication. The same
Mm.
concept repeated again, Revelation 17. And
Mm.
in the Bible prophecy says that in the end time, this Babylon, this whole the whore is
Mm.
gonna deceive the people using
Mm.
the analogy is that they're drinking the wine of her fornication. It's very
Mm.
interesting. And
Mm.
also continue verse 8, chapter 18. I just let me read a little bit because I'm excited when talking about prophecy.
Mm.
And he cried mightily with a strong voice, Revelation 18 verse 2, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen. The second angel message was repeated again in
Mm.
chapter 18. And it's become the habitation of devils and the hold of every false spirit and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all
Mm.
nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of fornication, and the kings on earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of earth were waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. This actually is talking about in the end, the Satan, the devil, is gonna deceive in the world through this energy wine. Why? Because sometimes we're thinking the wine is good. That's why we're drinking. There's no one drinking the wine genuinely thinking, oh, wine is bad, right?
Yes.
So which means that in the end, the Babylon using the same strategy, the devil using the same strategy, try to deceive the people. It might look good, but in the end, it's intoxicating. And people were deceived and buy into the Babylon. They stay in the Babylon. And that's where God says that, no, you need to come out of Babylon because that's not where I want you to be. It's very interesting. It's in the Bible as an analogy was used by Jesus Christ.
Yes, absolutely. So you're saying that it's the confusing effects of wine is used as an analogy, like you said, about for prophecy and during the last days, that it's these confusing effects that make people confused about what's right and wrong. Is that right?
Absolutely. And also in the end of Revelation chapter 22, God's in the business of this. Let me read out this. Revelation 22, verse 11. God at the end of era says this: he that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. So inside of the Revelation, the last part of the message to the world is that God is separating the people from the world. That's why God doesn't want us to lose the judgment to discern what is holy, what is unholy, what is clean, what is unclean. God don't want us to have a sober mind. And also that's also the verse in 1 Peter 5:8 says that be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary is the devil, as a roaring lion walks about as seeking who he might devour. If we don't have a sober mind, how do we discern an attack from Satan? How do we avoid it? And how do we come to God seeking for help?
So it seems like there's this recurrent theme of clarity of mind. We need to be really clear in our thinking, and even one split second wrong decision could mean a really big issue. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Well, if you have more time, we can dive into more study, like Daniel chapter 5, how the king of Babylon fall. And prior to this fall, he actually drank alcohol.
Okay, that
perverted his judgment and caused the finger of God writing the writing on the wall. It's an interesting story.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? We've still got a little bit of time on our hands, Pastor Chris. Could you tell us a little bit more about that section of the Bible that talks
I would love
about
to. You have time.
History? Yeah, absolutely.
So Daniel chapter 5 is actually the Old Testament story in Daniel. And I love Daniel and Revelation. This is the two my favorite books in the Bible. And if you read carefully in Daniel, is actually the symbolic meaning of Revelation. The same story in Daniel chapter 5, the fall of Babylon, will be actually repeated again in the end time. So let me turn to Daniel chapter 5 on my Bible here. Let me just summarize the story here a little bit very quick. So Belshazzar is the king who actually is the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. In this chapter, it actually tells us the destruction of the undefeatable city of Babylon. At the time, Babylon was so great. And this king, when this Middle Persian army comes siege the whole city, they were in a wartime. And this Belshazzar king said, let's have a party. Let's throw a party here to celebrate the greatness of this nation. Even though the enemy is outside the wall, don't worry, guys. Let's celebrate. Have a party. And to a point, he drink out. Let me read a few verses with you. So Daniel chapter 5, verse 1 and verse 4 says that Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank the wine before the 1,000. This is wartime, by the way. Who celebrates in wartime? That's why it shows how prideful this king is. He doesn't really care about what's going on outside, right? Then verse 2, Belshazzar, while he tastes the wine, he commanded bring a golden silver vessel, which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, that the temple was in, that the king and his princes, his wives, his concubines might drink therein. So what happened is he's drinking alcohol. All of a sudden he says that, hey, I'm not satisfied this way anymore. How about you taking all those vessel taking from God's temple? Let me use that to sell it, to join the party. And
Mm.
verse 3, and they that brought the golden vessel that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king, his prince, his wives, his concubines, and drink there in them. So they're using God's vessel to drink. And more than that, verse 4 says that they drink wine and praise the gods of gold, of silver, and bronze, of iron, of wood, of stone.
Mm.
This wine was leading to them for very interesting worship services.
Mm.
Not a true worshiping our God creator, they're worshiping the created thing.
Mm.
So the mind has really been on the judgment of this king Belshazzar. To a point, he using the godly thing, which is actually the God's vessel, to do a false worship.
Mm.
And that's actually ends that you read verse 5 says that in the same hour came forth the fingers of a man's hand and rolled over against the candlestick upon the plasters of the wall on the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the handwriting wall. So this is the famous part called the writing on the wall. God's judgment fall upon him because he was drinking alcohol, and then leads into the last act. Bible also talking about as abomination that he used God's vessel to worship the false god. And the same thing will happen in the end, as we're talking about Revelation 17 and Revelation 14. The great Babylon in the end time will do the same thing. He will toxinating the people's God's mind so much so, and they will taking God's vessel and start worshiping the wrong God. And that will lead to the end of the Babylon. God's judgment fall. And then you read the end of story, Daniel chapter 5. It says that, and the same day, if I read it for you, it says that, verse 30, Daniel chapter 5. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. There was the last act. That was the result of benumbing the mind by drinking alcohol. So the story you can see from the Bible, drinking alcohol or lose the mind or lose the ability to judge what is holy, what is not holy, will result really, really bad. For Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, he lost his life in the same day because the result of drinking alcohol.
So it really goes to show that drinking alcohol is not only harmful to our physical bodies, it's harmful for our mental health, and it's also harmful for our spiritual health as well.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah, gee.
And the spiritual health might lead to physical destruction.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we know that some of us, might not live to see Jesus come, but at the very least, when Jesus comes again, we will have that, that eternal life. But unfortunately, it sounds like, from what you're saying, Pastor Chris, that alcohol might not only lead to your physical death right now by causing you to develop cancer or liver problems, but it can also lead to like a spiritual death and to the loss of your eternal life.
Absolutely.
As well.
And sometimes you realize that alcohol is not a physical problem, and it's just so many families have been broken because there's alcohol.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a little bit habit, but when you indulging in sin, quote unquote, by the Bible, and you're not going to have a good family living on this side of the universe, I mean, in the eternity. And God is actually calling us to have the abundant life through Jesus Christ, is to stay away from all the intoxicating elements we can have, and to live us sober and be vigilant, that when we are able to love, we're able to be loved, and that's the key.
And drinking alcohol, it sounds like, will affect all of those things because of its effect on the mind. So we might not be thinking straight when we do things that we might not even normally dream of doing. And I can see, just from like the statistics and the patients that I've seen in the past with issues with domestic violence and things like that, alcohol can really wreak havoc in not only in our society, but even in our family unit as well.
Yes. So it's not just the physical problem. It's detrimental to our body. It's detrimental to our relationship. It's detrimental to our spirituality as well. That really comes to a point that it would destroy the very ability for us to love.
That's right. Because we're just so focused on that one thing, on alcohol, not only because we might be addicted to it, but also because of its effects on our brain.
Absolutely.
Now, we're going to open up the floor now to questions, and I've already got a couple of questions
here we
here
go.
actually. So we're going to open up the floor. So if you're on Facebook Live, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section, and we will do our best to answer them. And so we've got two questions already. So the first question. The parent of a couple of children actually asked this question: Why can children not? Why are children not allowed to drink alcohol? So that's a very good question, actually. And so I'll speak about it from a health perspective, and perhaps Pastor Chris, if you want to talk a little bit from a biblical or a spiritual perspective, you're more than welcome to do so. So from a health perspective, thank you, Joe, for that question. So the answer to this question is quite simple. Remember that picture that I showed you of the baby brain, that of the 6-week-old baby brain. You saw that a normal 6-week-old baby brain is actually quite healthy looking. It looks normal. And that 6-week-old baby brain, when the mother was drinking alcohol throughout the whole pregnancy, you could see how shrunken that brain looked. I have read articles and stories about mothers who never knew about the dangers of drinking alcohol during a pregnancy, and they, as their child grew up, they had lots of mental problems. They had problems regulating their emotions. They had low IQ. They couldn't think properly. They had all sorts of health issues. And when they discovered later on that there was no other reason other than what we now know as fetal alcohol syndrome, their brains were literally damaged by the alcohol. And so alcohol, especially in the developing mind, is so problematic. And that's why even the government realizes this and bans children from drinking alcohol, because the younger that you start drinking alcohol, the higher the chance of you developing addictions are to alcohol and other drugs. And also because alcohol so affects your frontal lobe, it affects your ability to think, it affects your ability to learn as well. School would be very difficult even if you had just a glass of alcohol a day, because long term you have damage, permanent damage to your brain. And the younger that you start, the more problematic it's going to be. And here's the issue: when you drink any substance that is addictive, just like alcohol, the longer you drink, the more that you will need of that particular substance. So you might have start off only drinking half a cup or half a glass of wine a day. And then after months or even years, you might need a glass. After a few months or years, you might need 2 glasses, 3 glasses, 4 glasses. And before you know it, you're drinking a whole bottle of wine every day just to help you meet those needs that your body has, because it's
Those
grown
cravings, huh?
addicted to it. Yes, it's scary stuff. I mean, I don't know if you've got anything to add from your personal experience. I mean, because I myself, I haven't drunk alcohol. I don't drink alcohol at all, because I know of the dangerous effects. But Pastor Chris, you've had personal experience. But I know that this alcohol problem is a real issue, especially the younger that you start drinking.
Yeah, I was one of the victims, I guess. I started
Mm,
drinking pretty young.
mm,
I thinking it also attributes to I was really easy to get provoked to anger.
mm,
I think that's also because I heard a theory. I don't know if it's correct or not. Probably your doctor can correct me. It
mm.
says that alcohol is going to your brain to
Mm-hmm.
suppress the frontal lobe to release
Yes.
a chemical. That chemical is actually the no chemical. That we have an
Mm,
impulse to do something. Our
mm,
brain, our frontal lobe will release a chemical says that don't do it. That's called a
Yep.
judgment. But the
Yes.
alcohol comes in will suppress this no chemistry. That's why
Mm,
we feel like we're braver anymore.
Yes,
So
that's
it
right.
caused a lot of stupid decisions be made.
Mm,
And that's why I didn't really graduate from high school. I was kicked out because of that. So I
mm,
think I was the
mm,
victim.
yes.
As I think as we're drinking, especially young, and
Mm,
when we were in the teenage years,
mm,
our brain actually was developing, especially our frontal lobe,
mm,
to give us more no chemical
mm,
to our impulses. If we do that, which means that it's lesser, what we are is lesser it's more easier for us to indulge in our um, those thoughts, which is not
Yes.
really, it shouldn't be
Mm.
done.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's why
Absolutely.
we could be more rebellious
Mm-hmm.
in our
Mm-hmm.
teenage years, and
Yeah.
also less self-control. It
Mm.
causes
Mm.
big problem and troubles.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I did mention there was one particular slide that showed the effects of
Mm.
alcohol on the brain, and it absolutely affects our frontal lobe, just like you said, Pastor Chris,
Mm.
and it decreases our inhibitory response, which is the fancy way of saying that it
Oh,
makes you
yeah.
more likely to
That's
say
the word.
yes to something when you might have said no to that
Yeah.
thing. A little bit like Noah and Lot. I mean, these people were amazing people. I mean, Noah, he was preaching for 100 plus years. An amazing man of God, and yet at the end, he still he made a mistake in a sense. Perhaps
That's right.
not as bad as Lot, but still a mistake nevertheless. So it just goes to show even these really respectable people can still be affected by alcohol as well.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
we've got another question here. Let me pull it up. The second question: will alcohol interfere with my Bible reading and spiritual connection with God?
Let me answer this question.
Mm,
Um, Reading the Bible is have a conversation with God.
mm,
If some of us having alcohol, you have a hard time to communicate with your family, I probably will assume you have a hard time to communicate with God.
mm, mm.
Um,
Yes.
that's probably a simple answer to that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed.
Mm,
The alcohol interference with my Bible reading.
mm, mm,
I never tried it.
mm,
Have alcohol, drink alcohol first, and come to read the Bible.
mm,
If let me put a spiritual insight to this question.
mm,
If alcohol is forbidden in the Bible and almost classified as a sin because of Bible says our body is a temple of God. It should take
mm,
care of it instead of destroying it.
mm,
If
mm,
you are using you just indulging in a sin, quote unquote, in the Bible,
mm,
why do you want to come to know God who actually
mm,
will save you from sin?
mm,
All right. Let me
mm,
use another analogy to describe that. It's like I just I just had an affair with someone else,
mm,
and then having an affair with someone else is that easier for me to communicate with my wife.
mm, mm.
It's a little bit oxymoron in
Yeah,
there.
that's right. That's right.
So that's a
Absolutely.
spiritual side of that. But
Mm,
people say, that, oh, where does Bible say that drink alcohol is a sin? Well,
mm,
we see that is because Bible says that we want to be separated from the world, from the
mm,
influence, bad influence. Our body is a temple of God. So
mm,
if we go deliberately against that, and
mm,
I can safely, as a Christian, say call that a sin.
mm.
So if you indulging a sin, the same time, is that sin coming a way of communicating with God? Absolutely. That's
Mm,
Isaiah 59 verse 2. All right.
mm,
Sin separates us from God.
mm.
So you can't have an affair with someone else at the same time asking, can I connect with my wife?
Yes,
Your wife
that's
probably not
right.
going to be happy with that.
Absolutely not. We've got a question from Facebook now. So
Mm.
the first one, I'll just put it up here on the screen. It says here, alcohol is encouraged at times such as celebrations and special occasions. How do we respond to people who say that occasional alcohol is okay? So that's a question from Henry. Thank you, Henry, for your questions. Now,
Doctor, you go ahead.
do you have anything to add, or I can take this one? I have no issues with that one.
You go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So actually, I was going to ask this question if no one asked this question myself. So, look, for me, as a doctor, when people ask me this question, if any alcohol okay, I always tell them, look, the guidelines have been released already. There is no safe limit of drinking alcohol, so it's a little bit like that story. I don't know if you've used this story before, Pastor Chris, in any of your sermons, but a mother was baking cookies one day, and the children were asking a question. Why can't I just do this thing that I really want to do when you said no. It's just a little thing. Can't I just do it a little bit? And so the mother decided to teach their children a life lesson in a sense. So she made some cookies, and it smelled really lovely. And the children were coming in saying, "Oh, mom, those cookies smell really, really good. When can we have them?" It's like, "Oh, soon you'll be able to have them." So she took out the cookies from the oven, placed it on a tray, and so the children said, "Oh, can we have those cookies now?" And the mother said, "Yes, you can. I just wanted to let you know that I've put in a little bit of our dog's poo into the mix, and I've mixed it all up and baked it in there, but it's just so little that you're not going to be able to tell at all." Do you think that the children ate it, Pastor Chris?
I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I
me
wouldn't want
neither.
my kids to eat it as well if I have some.
Yeah. I mean, and it just goes to show that even a little bit of poo, a little bit of poison, a little bit of sin is not going to be acceptable, even if there was just a tiny little bit there. So I always tell my patients, look, a little bit of cancer is not something that you even want to have. And so that's why I tell my patients, look, if it was me, and I'd always tell them that if from my personal point of view, you're missing nothing when you don't drink alcohol whatsoever. And in fact, you have more to lose than to gain by drinking alcohol. So that's my thoughts on that particular question. Anything that you want to add, Pastor Chris?
Oh, I think it's a spiritual matter as well.
Mm,
How do we define entertainment or
mm,
fun? Or because sometimes it's okay to have a little bit fun. People paint
mm,
it that way.
mm,
As Christians, we realize that we're looking for the joy which should result abiding in God.
mm,
We are looking at God is a source of joy to our soul,
mm,
and we're not looking at the world is to provide something to us.
mm,
So I think
mm,
that's the spiritual battle behind that. That's
mm,
exactly this question actually shows me as a little bit as we talked about Revelation 17
mm,
that Babylon will deceive the people in the end to give us something apparently we don't think is toxicating. I think it's
mm,
okay to do it, but to put us aside from the Lord.
mm,
So as a true Christian, we surrender our life to God. We want to follow God 100%, which
mm,
means that the Lord becomes the joy to us. And there's many
mm,
places in the Bible, Psalms, David put in that, the Lord is my joy. All right.
mm,
Also in Galatians chapter 5 says that the fruit of the Spirit, Holy Spirit, is joy and
mm,
peace and love.
mm,
And the source
mm,
to get joy, to get true happiness, is
mm,
from abiding in God,
mm,
not going to the world to looking for some
mm.
happiness or joy. And we know that's
Absolutely.
not gonna last long
Mm,
because from occasionally drinking, I feel a little bit better, and then you'll
mm.
turn into something habitual drinking
Yes,
later on.
that's right.
So it's
That's
it's a
right.
black hole that's never
Mm,
gonna satisfy you.
mm.
So I think is the
Absolutely.
mentality behind that really matters.
Yes, yes, that's right. We've got another question here from Ting Ting. I'll put it up on the screen here. In Proverbs 31, verses 6 to 7, it mentions that give wine to those who are bitter of heart. Let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more. Does that mean that wine is a solution to adverse life and mental problems? Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a typical verse you read in Proverbs 31. Like for example, if you read the story of Jesus Christ,
Mm,
when he was on the Calvary, he was crucified. What did a
mm,
Roman soldier give it to him? And
mm,
this actually a practice because the cruciating pain everybody received on the crucifixion. They try
mm,
to use the intoxicating drinks to ease the pain. So,
mm,
like you say,
mm,
the alcohol does have an effect
mm.
to numb your senses.
Mm,
So
mm,
that's what the soldier put in that very wine
mm,
to Jesus Christ. Hey,
mm.
take it,
Yes. Yep.
because that will help you to ease
Mm,
your pain now. But
mm.
Jesus Christ said that no, I don't want to take it.
Yes.
Jesus tried it. It's intoxicating. He does
Mm-hmm.
not want to take any of that into his body. He
Mm,
rejected.
mm.
So it was a common practice at the time to ease the pain of the ones about to
Yes.
perish.
Mm, mm. And I think we have to make a really clear distinction here between medicinal use and use for, in a sense, drowning out your problems, because
Mm.
we know that alcohol certainly makes mental problems worse. So if you're depressed and you drink alcohol, you're going to be even more depressed. And so drowning out your problems with alcohol of any description is certainly a bad way of doing things. But we do know that in the past, if you were about to amputate your arm, they gave you alcohol to help numb the pain. And so I think when we have to draw the distinction between medicinal use and just because you're drowning your sorrows, so to speak, because when we use it in that way, we're actually going to be worse off. But for medicinal use, there could be other reasons. Not that we really use alcohol nowadays for medicinal purposes, unlike back in the 17th, 18th century when that was all we had. But certainly, I would highly advise against using alcohol especially when you have mental health issues. It's just going to make you worse. People have drunk alcohol to help them to become braver to commit suicide, for example. And they've done lots of things, and people have succeeded, unfortunately, in making these rash decisions. So certainly I would highly advise against doing so. And I'm sure you can add some more, Pastor Chris, but really, instead of turning to alcohol, we should be turning to God and turning to the Bible, because God is really the only one that can give us the strength, the mental strength, the physical strength, the spiritual strength to get through whatever adverse problems that we're going through, in our lives.
Absolutely.
Now, we've got here also another question here from Joe. How do you explain the strong drink in Deuteronomy 14, verse 26, the Israelites had in front of God? Do you want to take this one, Pastor Chris?
So there's two types of wine in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. The strong drinks, it means very simply means that it's alcoholic. And there are wines in the Bible talking about, I don't have the Hebrew words in front of me here, but I can put it up probably next time or some other time, that there are two types of word. It means alcoholic and means fresh grape juice. Like, for example, the story typically in Jesus story, he had a first miracle, turn the water into the wine. People said that, Jesus drink alcohol, so we must be okay for us to drink it. If you read it in context, in the whole Bible, and put the perspective that Jesus Christ refusing to take that little bite on the cross, Christ never drink alcohol, right? And the reason why is the word is there is because the Greek words only have one word to describe fresh grape juice and also the fermented alcoholic juice. So sometimes when we read the Bible, we try to insert what we want in there. But if you look at in the context, the whole Bible, the views Bible has on alcohol, we can pretty much sure that Jesus Christ never taken alcohol.
Yes. Yeah.
He never taking any intoxicating to benumb his mind, even at the point of a death. That's excruciating pain. He had it on the Calvary. He refused to take it. I don't think he will turn 100 liters of alcohol on the Canaan. Let everybody get drunk.
Yes.
If he wasn't taking it on the Calvary, he wasn't going to taking at a marriage supper, the marriage dinner there.
Yes, especially when he didn't have any pain or anything like at that time.
Exactly.
You would think if there was ever time that he could be legitimately drinking something, because there was no anesthetics, no painkillers, in a sense back in those days that you could take in a tablet form, but they just had alcohol. You would think that would have been the only time Jesus could have legitimately done so, but I guess he wanted to be really clear, just like you said, Pastor Chris, really sober in his mind.
Absolutely, he has to be sober.
Yeah, during that difficult time.
So coming back to the strong drink in the Old Testament, it means the strong drink is normally referring to alcoholic. And you have those words wine in there. It means just simply fresh juice. And there's actually a verse. I think I put it on there somewhere. Bible says in Isaiah chapter 65 verse 8, it says that as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one says that do not destroy it, for a blessing is in it. So the same word was wine was used in there, but it's called new wine. It's the fresh grape juice. And God actually put a blessing into it. It's good for our health, as you're talking about.
Yes.
One at 1.5 apples,
Yes,
you
that's
produce
right.
the same effect as one glass of wine. So there's a new wine, a grape juice, and it actually is really good to the soul.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's 11 o'clock now. That's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for watching and joining us, especially all those questions on Facebook. We have been keeping a track of them, and sorry that there was one or two that we weren't able to get to. But look, certainly bring your questions along again next week. We'd be happy to answer them. And we're going to have a really interesting talk with Dr. Aaron Coe next week about the gut. What's all the rumblings about? And so I'm really looking forward to that topic about gut health. So that'll be a really interesting one. And thank you so much for your time, Pastor Chris. We really enjoyed having your
Pleasure.
biblical insights
Praise the
on
Lord.
here. And perhaps just before we go, could you close with a word of prayer for us, Pastor Chris?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's have a word of prayer. Father, we thank you again for the time we can gather together to dig it deep into your Bible, the truths about the wine. And Father, I just want to pray that you give us the insight of the Bible, give us Holy Spirit to see that you are in the business of saving souls from our sins. And Father, you are the business separating us from the world and separating us from the Babylon. And Father, I pray and teach our heart to surrender everything to you because you are the one who saved us. You be the joy to our soul. Father, I pray, give us a desire that we can seek after your kingdom, your righteousness first. Everything shall be added unto us. And teach us surrender to love you and to abide in your law, your words. Thank you, Lord. Continue to bless us as we continue to serve you and to get ready before you come. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much
Thank you,
for
Doctor.
that, Pastor Chris. And so we're going to finish our stream for today. But don't worry, if you missed the first part, you can join us once the stream is ended for the watch right from the beginning, and you can see everything from there. We look forward to seeing you next week. See ya.
All right. Have a good weekend.